Okay, we're continuing with my book, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, in alphabetical order, humor quotes. So basically, these are just quotes about humor. Not all these quotes are in the book. Again, my personal notes are much, much longer than what's in the book. And I'll add and go to these categories. This is obviously not edited, okay? A lot of this is stuff I added later, but just some quotes on humor, because if you want to be good at writing jokes, you got to understand jokes a little better, okay? Some people are just funny. Like if you remember that kid in high school that made you laugh, that's a clever person. Somebody who's really funny is clever. They don't have to be literary. My mom was really funny. I never saw her read a book. Anyway, a couple quotes. Johnny Carson, if people like you, you already have won 80% of the game. And you know that there's some comedians, the really great ones, like Rodney Dangerfield. He's funny. He's just funny looking. Same thing with Sam Kinison. He's just funny looking. Aristotle had said long ago, the key to comedy is surprise. And often it's a surprise where there's a release of tension. Like if you're walking down a path in the forest and you're like, uh-oh, that looks like a snake. And then all of a sudden you look at it more closely, oh, it's just a stick. Haha, isn't that funny? Because you're relieved. Sam Kinison is the funniest comedian who ever lived. I spent a long time studying all these comedians because I was interested in trying to be funnier myself. And he does all kinds of things. You want to just see good comedy technique. Some of the best technique is Sam Kinison, how he changes his pitch, his cadence, his speed, the volume of his talking, his little gestures as he walks around. The great comedians, they all walk around a lot. Look at Eddie Murphy, Raw and Delirious. Look at these other ones. Look at Chappelle, how he walks around. They're great. Chris Rock was another great comedian. Rodney Dangerfield's more of a dry delivery, and he was also magnificent in the movie Caddyshack and Back to School. Okay, and Sam Kinison, he'll swear all the time. Comedians, the real comedians, they swear all the time. People who are funny in real life too, they swear a lot. They're vulgar. They're very insulting in a playful way. Like a typical Sam Kinison opener on one of his comedy specials. Yeah, I effed up. I missed the Joan Rivers show. Okay, and then he goes on to making fun of the Joan Rivers show. Only people who are over 70 in diapers watch that show. Things like that. And he says a lot of, he's got a lot of beautiful, funny metaphors. He snapped like an effing rubber band. That was about Captain Kangaroo. Okay, and then like how we talked about Khrushchev, how we used to talk, that was how everybody used to talk about the Russians. Khrushchev banging his shoe on the table saying, we will bury you, that ugly effing Russian bastard, okay? That was funny. That's how we talked about the Russians. They were the evil empire. We were the good, God-fearing Americans, okay? Now America has, of recent, become a bit of an evil empire, so hopefully we'll get back to America being a great Christian country. I hope so. We'll see. The punchline word usually comes at the end for a climax. The truth is often funny. There's so much lying in the modern world that when you tell the truth, it sounds like an outrageous, funny statement. Like pre-med education is fake. That sounds like an outrageous statement, but it's obviously true if you look at it. You don't cure a patient with calculus or physics. That's nonsense, okay? All right, moving on stage is good. Here's a couple brief quotes by Steve Wright. Knowledge is to know what riding a unicycle is. Skill is being able to actually ride the unicycle. The restaurant I went to said I could order breakfast at whatever time I wanted, so I ordered French toast during the Renaissance. So the joke there is you see that anytime you want, you're thinking breakfast or lunch or dinner, and then he's meant historical time, and that's an example of, we're going to talk about the anatomy of a joke later, whereby a word has two meanings. And you first go down the expected, more common meaning, and then the punchline comes and surprises you because it shows that the joke uses the secondary, less expected meaning of the word, and that's a typical way to write a joke, an unexpected conclusion to a situation. So the first line is the setup line, the second line is the payoff line. G.K. Chesterton said, humor always has within it the idea of the humorist himself being at some disadvantage and caught in the entanglements and contradictions of regular life. Humor also works well if you got something that has a strong identity and it can handle mocking. Like you can mock the Christian church. You can mock the Catholic Church. It can stand strong no matter what you say. Like the old joke used to be, is the Pope Catholic? And then, of course, you'd say, of course the Pope is Catholic. But, nowadays you would not be so sure, okay? That was the old radio talk show host used to tell that joke. Okay, Rush Limbaugh. Okay, let's see what else. Judy Carter, she said, funny works well when you talk about something that annoys you. Um, Emotional crescendo. Just like Handel could create an emotional crescendo with his music, that's what Sam Kinison created with his comedy. And other great comedians can do that to some extent as well. P.J. O'Rourke, comedic writer. Comedy has to work fast. You got to get to the punchline quick. It has to, boom, hit like a quick joke. Humor has to work immediately. And most of the best jokes, they come quick like that. And a person who's funny, you often describe him as a quick wit. So other things that are funny is, of course, surprise, benign violation, an ill-equipped, relatable character who just doesn't get it and doesn't give up, like Don Quixote. When two characters in a sitcom have a different script, like the man and the woman in a relationship have a totally different understanding of a situation, which causes them to get more and more upset at each other because they have different premises, that can be funny. Let's see. Satire is the highest category of humor. It requires the author to be very familiar with the subject so that they can mock it in a playful way. Parody can be quite similar. Let's see. Some of the great cartoons: Bug Bunny, the trickster; Daffy Duck, the bumbling authority; Pepe Le Pew, the Lothario; Elmer Fudd, the stubborn dummy; Mr. Peabody, the know-it-all dog. And they had something like that too in Scooby-Doo. The little dog was the real clever one, like a Doogie Howser. Okay, hyperbole works well for a lot of humor. Let's see, what else is good in here? Like Tristram Shandy was a good example of a classical humorous book from the 1700s, where most of the book happened before the author was born. Okay, a mockumentary is another example of a parody satire. Okay. Satire, again, usually is a celebration of the thing. When you're writing, usually if something's funny, you're going to laugh yourself. George Saunders, he's got some pretty good lines about writing. He says, good writing gives the reader little pleasure bursts, creating micro moments that keep the reader wanting to keep moving through the text. Humor is what happens when we're told the truth quicker and more direct than what we're used to. Okay, the more personal the truth, the better, the funnier it is. Okay, let's see here. A lot of times, antisocial, kind of bitter, grouchy people are very funny. They tell the truth. They don't care about what people think, and that makes them funny. Oscar Wilde, if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh or they will kill you. And there's some truth in that, too. People get very pissed off at you. You don't get in trouble for telling a lie. You get promoted and paid money for lying. You get in trouble for telling the truth. Okay, humor has a healing effect, said by a doctor. Okay, here is like Victor Raskin writing on, and Greg Dean writing on comedy theory. The basic anatomy of a joke is first a setup line that contains a connector word with at least two meanings. The setup line carries with it an implied assumption. The second line is the punchline, which then uses the unexpected meaning of the connector word to create a humorous surprise. Yep. You get a little dopamine rush in your brain. It's very pleasant. It lowers your stress level. Okay. Bill Murray, the great Irish comedian actor, said, most conversation is predictable. You know what the other person is going to say before they say it. You know what you are expected to say. All you have to do is throw in a little surprise and things become fun. Oscar Wilde wrote, some people bring happiness and laughter into whatever room they enter. Others remove it. And my mom was like that. I saw my mom was always making people laugh and have a good time. And I'm like, gee, when I was young, I thought she was stupid. But the older I got, the more I realized, gosh, wherever my mom goes, everyone is happy. That's a good way to be in life. And I also noticed something. I would go to the tennis club where my mom used to play a lot of tennis. And if my mom wasn't there, I was looking for my mom or whatever the reason, I'd go over there. All these people would just come out of the woodwork. Oh, I know your mother. I love your mother. Your mother's a saint. We love your mother. They just wanted to say all these nice things about my mom. That's how my mom, the effect she had on people. That's why as I got older, I wanted to be more like her and joke around a lot because it made everybody happy. Oh, and then I was like reading a comic book in the kitchen. And this is in my marriage to my ex-wife. And she sees me reading the comic. She's like, what are you doing? Why do you waste your time with that comic book? Why don't you go out and get another job moonlighting so you can make some money for this family? You're so effing lazy. I was coming home at 7:30, 8:30 at night, okay? And she wants me to work on top of that. And she's like, and I'm like, no, thank you. So you can divorce me and I have to pay you more alimony. Another time I was reading some book about psychology or comedy or something. And I showed it to my wife. Oh, what this psychologist had said. Jeffrey Miller, he said, that women like men who are funny because it's an indicator of intelligence that's hard to fake. And I showed this to my wife and I told her, look, if you ever divorce me, I'll be able to attract another woman with my funniness. And my wife said, you don't understand. Women like a man who is confident with a sense of humor. That's different. You are funny like a clown, and women do not like clowns. Ouch.